It was never truly a book, and it was never about death. What we call the Book of the Dead is a name given by modern scholars. In ancient Egypt, it was known as the Book of Coming Forth by Day. This alone holds a secret. It speaks not of darkness or endings, but of emergence, of a soul stepping into a new kind of light. For the ancient Egyptians, life and death were not opposites. They were two halves of the same path. Life was one form of existence. Death was a continuation of it, in another shape. The Book of the Dead was not written to mourn the dead. It would create a guide to soul, the BA, through a complex and sacred journey that began at the moment of death and ended in eternal life. It started in whispers, written first not in books, but on the walls of tombs deep in the sands of the Nile Valley. The oldest versions of these texts appear over 4,000 years ago in the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom. Later, in the Middle Kingdom, they transformed into what we call the coffin texts, inscribed inside sarcophagi. By the New Kingdom, they evolved again, now copied on papyrus scrolls, illustrated with vivid drawings, placed beside the dead inside their tombs. And these became the scrolls we now call the Book of the Dead. But it was never a single scroll. No one master copy ever existed. Every version was different. Every soul had a path unique to them. Over 200 spells could be chosen from, each one like a spiritual tool, selected based on the life the person had lived and the kind of eternity they hoped to reach. These were not just prayers. They were technologies of the soul. Words meant to activate memory, to awaken the spirit's knowledge of the other world. Each spell, each line, was written as if it could open a door the soul would one day need to pass through, a secret the living could not yet understand, but the dead must remember. Spell 1 begins with a purpose, the chapter of coming forth by day, so that the soul may go forth into the light after death. It is an instruction, a manual, a bridge between the seen and the unseen. And from there, the journey unfolds. Why did the Egyptians do all this? Because they believed that the soul must be prepared, that nothing in the afterlife happened by chance, that to pass safely through the Duat, the great underworld, one needed knowledge, power, and purity. The Book of the Dead gave the soul a voice, a memory, and a map. This map was not geographical, but spiritual. It reflected the deep understanding the Egyptians had of consciousness, of dream, of fear, of judgment, and awakening. They believed the inner world shaped the outer world, even after death, and that the soul must learn to navigate both. The Book of the Dead does not focus on mourning. It focuses on mastery. It does not ask for grief. It offers preparation. To die without knowledge was to risk getting lost in the many layers of the underworld. But to die with the words of the book and the symbols drawn on your tomb was to be armed with light. The heart of Egyptian religion was balance, ma'at, not just balance between order and chaos, but between body and soul, life and death, mortal and eternal. The Book of the Dead was one of their greatest creations to preserve this balance, to teach the soul how to stay true when illusions came, to walk forward when fear tried to hold it still. In this way, the Book of the Dead is not a myth. It is a mirror, one that still reflects to us today the deepest truth of the Egyptian vision, that death is not the end of life, but the doorway to its greatest mystery. As we explore the spells and images that make up this sacred book, we must remember, this is not a story about ancient history. It is a living wisdom, a coded guide, written not only for pharaohs or priests, but for anyone who dare to seek eternity. The tombs have been opened, the papyri unrolled. The secrets that were once whispered in the dark are now spoken aloud. But the journey is only beginning. In the heart of ancient Egypt, death was not a fall into silence. It was the opening of a hidden path, a passage woven through mystery, shadow, and sacred light. This was not a descent into chaos, but an ascent through transformation. The Book of the Dead served as a map. When a person died, their soul began a journey through the Duat, the unseen world. The Duat was not just one place. It was a realm of many parts. Rivers of fire, lakes of stillness, deserts of trial, and halls of judgment. It mirrored the Nile, the stars, the body, and the mind. And it was always shifting, part dream, part reality. The journey began inside the tomb. The soul, called the Ba, rose from the body, while the Ka, the life force, remain behind. Together, these aspects of the self move into the first stages of the do-it, sometimes carried by divine boats, sometimes flying as birds, sometimes walking beside gods in silence. But there were dangers. The do-it was guarded by gates, each watched over by deities with names like He Who Dances in Blood or She Who Devours the Dead. These were not demons in the modern sense, but personifications of fear, doubt, and forgetfulness. To pass them, the soul needed to speak the right words. These were found in the spells of the Book of the Dead. Words were power. Knowing the name of a gatekeeper meant you could pass safely. In spell 144, the soul says, I know you, I know your name, and I know the name of the one who guards you. It was not enough to be brave. The soul had to be wise. It had to remember the truth, even in the face of illusion. Each region of the do-it had trials. Lakes of fire that burned away lies, mountains that tested courage, and halls filled with mirrors of memory. The soul would face the serpent Apophis, the force of uncreation, not just a creature, but the embodiment of fear and chaos. To move forward, the soul had to stand firm, not through violence, but through clarity. Time did not flow as it did in life. The soul could revisit memories, witness their own actions, speak to their ancestors. They might meet a form of themselves, their shadow, their regrets, their unlived truths. The do-it held all of it, and still, the soul was called to move forward. At every stage, the Book of the Dead served like a guide, not only giving instructions, but revealing truths. For example, the soul learns that light is not always bright. Sometimes it shines through understanding, and that death is not about endings, it is about becoming. One of the most beautiful truths hidden in this journey is the importance of the Sahu, the spiritual body. It was believed that through right action and sacred knowledge, the soul could form a new body of light. The Sahu was not born automatically. It was earned, and only with it could the soul stand in the presence of Osiris. But before that final vision, the soul had to cross the Hall of Two Truths. This was the place of ultimate reckoning. But we will speak of that more fully in the next chapter. For now, we remain in the flow of the journey. The soul moved between night and day. It walked with Ra, the sun god, as he sailed through the underworld. At night, Ra himself passed through the do-it, shedding his old self and being reborn with the sunrise. The soul, too, followed this rhythm, dying, transforming, and being reborn through trial after trial. In spell 17, the soul declares, I am yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I am the hidden one who opens a path. This is not just a description. It is a realization. The soul is not separate from the journey. It is the journey. Some texts describe the soul traveling through 12 gates, one for each hour of the night. Others speak of 21 portals or 42 districts. These numbers were not just measurements. They reflected layers of consciousness. Each gate tested a different virtue: truth, courage, stillness, joy, clarity, trust. As the journey continues, the soul begins to change. It remembers who it truly is. The illusions of the world fall away. And with each spell, each test, the soul is shaped into something higher, more radiant, more real. This was the gift of the Book of the Dead. It did not promise safety. It promised awakening. It offered not an escape from judgment, but a preparation for it. The final destination of the journey is not a paradise in the sky. It is a return to harmony, a reunion with the source. To stand before Osiris, not in fear, but in truth. To become an Ak, a blessed, luminous being, and rise with the stars. And so, the journey through the do-it is not just about the soul after death. It is about the inner self, here and now. Each of us walks through our own shadows, passes gates of fear, and seeks the light that does not fade. The Book of the Dead was written to remind us the path is real. The way is within. There comes a moment in the soul's journey when everything stands still. All motion stops. All illusions fall away. The trials of the do-it fade into silence, and the soul enters the Hall of Ma'at. It is a place of balance, the most sacred chamber in the afterlife. Here, the soul faces a weighing of the heart, one of the most profound teachings in Egyptian spirituality. It is not just a judgment. It is a moment of complete truth. In this hall, nothing can be hidden, nothing can be exaggerated or denied. The heart speaks for itself. The Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of consciousness. It carried memory, intention, emotion, and truth. The word for heart was Ib. It was seen as the record of the soul's life. Every action, every choice, every thought lived within it. At the center of the hall stands a great scale. On one side rests the heart of the deceased. On the other, a single feather, the feather of Maat, goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. If the heart is lighter than the feather, the soul is free to enter eternal life. If it is heavier, weighed down by lies, harm, or imbalance, the soul is cast into oblivion. But this moment is not faced alone. 42 divine beings, known as the assessors of Maat, stand as silent judges. They do not speak first. The soul does. It must declare its innocence before each one in turn, stating what is called a negative confession. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not caused pain. I have not polluted the waters. I have not closed my ears to truth. I have not made others weep. There are 42 of these statements, one for each judge. Each declaration is not merely a denial, but an affirmation of purity. The soul is not proving it never stumbled. It is revealing that its essence remains aligned with Maat, with harmony, with cosmic balance. Each judge represents a principle. Each confession is a mirror. Together, they form the blueprint for a life in balance. This process wasn't about punishment. It was about resonance. If the soul vibrated with truth, it would rise. If it clung to distortion, it would sink. The scales simply showed what already was. To the Egyptians, Maat was more than a goddess. She was the order behind stars, the breath between opposites. She held the world together, not through force, but through rightness. Living by Maat meant living with awareness, with integrity, with sacred care. The Book of the Dead prepared the soul for this moment. Spells were written to help the heart remain light. Spell 30b is perhaps the most direct. O my heart which I had for my mother, do not stand up against me as a witness. Do not oppose me in the tribunal. Do not make my name stink before the great God. This plea shows something beautiful, that the Egyptians saw judgment not as external punishment, but as inner consequence. The soul judged itself. The heart could betray, or it could set free. If the scale balanced, if the heart and the feather met in stillness, then Thoth, the scribe of the gods, recorded the result. With calm hands, he noted the truth. It was not a trial. It was a recording of what already was. Then came Osiris, Lord of the Dead, seated on his throne, green-skinned, wrapped in white, holding the crook and flail, symbols of kingship and spiritual power. He welcomed the soul, not as a god of fear, but as a symbol of resurrection. But if the heart was heavy, another figure stepped forward, Ammit, the devourer. She was part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus, the three most feared animals in Egypt. She did not torture. She did not torment. She simply consumed the unworthy heart, ending the soul's chance for eternal life. To be eaten by Ammit was not eternal punishment. It was spiritual oblivion. The soul would dissolve, lose its name, its memory, its path. It would no longer exist. And so, the Egyptians did not fear hell. They feared non-being. To be forgotten, to lose the chance of becoming Ak, a shining, effective spirit in the afterlife. That is why they prepared so carefully, why they recited the spells, why they painted the hall of Maat in tombs and temples, why they trained their hearts and life to remain light. Because the truth was not just something to be spoken after death. It was to be lived before it. This judgment scene, the weighing of the heart, is one of the most enduring images of ancient Egypt. We still see it in museums, in books, in dreams. But its meaning runs deeper than ritual. It is a reminder that every choice matters, that the soul is shaped by what it carries. The 42 confessions are not about perfection. They are about alignment, about choosing truth, even when it is difficult, about living in harmony with the self, the world, and the divine. The weighing of the heart is not only a moment in death. It is a daily moment. It happens in silence, in reflection, in our smallest decisions. And the greatest secret? The feather of Maat still waits. The scale is still here, and the soul still speaks. Beneath the surface of papyrus and ink lies a mystery deeper than translation. The Book of the Dead is not just a list of rituals. It is a work of symbols, a language of the soul. And while many have studied its surface, few have journeyed into its heart. Among the over 200 known spells in the Book of the Dead, only a handful are widely discussed. Most focus on the famous scenes, the weighing of the heart, the boat of Ra, the gates of the Duat. But many of the most profound teachings are hidden in the quieter verses, the lesser-known invocations that rarely make it into modern retellings. Take, for instance, Spell 43. On the surface, it reads as a simple protection to prevent the head of a man from being taken from him in the realm of the dead. But beneath these words lies a secret. The head, in Egyptian mysticism, represents identity and consciousness. To lose, it means to lose clarity, to forget the self. This spell is not just about a physical head. It is a reminder. Protect your awareness, your essence, your spiritual focus, even in the chaos of the afterlife. Then there is Spell 29, often overlooked. It is a plea to keep the heart still, to guard against betrayal. But what it reveals is a deeper fear, that the heart, if filled with guilt or confusion, could turn against its own soul. These spells teach us that the greatest threats are not outer monsters, but inner misalignments. Another hidden gem is Spell 26, which calls upon the soul to merge with the divine eye, the Ujat. This is the eye of Horus, symbol of wholeness, healing, and vision. To become one with the eye is to see without distortion, to perceive both the physical and spiritual worlds as they truly are. This spell points to something more, a transformation of perception, a spiritual awakening. And what does Spell 136 be? Rarely mentioned, it is a spell of transformation, to become the lotus. In Egypt, the lotus was a sacred flower that closed at night and opened at dawn. It was a symbol of rebirth, of the soul's rising. To become the lotus was to awaken in eternity, to rise from the waters of darkness with the sun. These forgotten spells are like buried stars, still shining, if we only know where to look. But it is not just the spells themselves. It is the symbols within them. The ancient Egyptians did not separate art from spirit. Every image, every gesture, every color had meaning. The scarab beetle, for example, was not just decoration. It represented Khepri, the god of becoming, the force that pushes the sun up each morning. A soul invoking the scarab was calling upon inner transformation. The Jed pillar, often seen in illustrations, was not a random shape. It symbolized stability, the spine of Osiris, the backbone of awakening. When a soul embraced a Jed, it was asking for inner strength, for the ability to stand upright in the face of death. And what of the Ankh, the Luke cross? It was a symbol of life, yes, but also the merging of opposites, male and female, spirit and matter, time and eternity. To hold the Ankh was to hold the mystery of life itself, not only in body, but in spirit. Much of this has been lost in translation. Modern eyes look at the text and see myth, but the Egyptians wrote in layers. A single line could hold ritual, philosophy, and cosmic law. They spoke in symbols because symbols endure. This is why even the layout of the scrolls mattered. Spells were often placed in nonlinear sequences. Some begin with resurrection, then move into darkness, then into judgment, then return again to flight. The journey of the soul was not linear. It moved in spirals, reflections, cycles. And so did the text. Some versions of the Book of the Dead include personal additions, names changed, words rewritten, symbols added by the scribe or the family of the deceased. These customizations were not errors. They were spiritual signatures. Just as no two souls are alike, no two scrolls were exactly the same. It is in this space, the forgotten, the overlooked, that the Book of the Dead reveals its true power. Because it was not only for guiding the dead, it was also for awakening the living. The spells can be read as inner instructions, meditations, affirmations, shadow work, light work. They teach us how to face fear, how to remember truth, how to call upon our higher self when surrounded by confusion. Spell 125, for example, the most famous of all, is not only for judgment, it is a daily mirror. Its 42 declarations are not only said before gods, There are questions we must ask ourselves now. Am I in alignment with truth? Do I pollute the waters of life? Do I speak with purpose? Do I walk in balance? The Book of the Dead was meant to be spoken aloud, to be heard, to activate resonance in the body and soul. The Egyptians believed sound was sacred, that vibration shaped reality. When a spell was recited, it echoed not just through the air, but through time, through space, through the invisible layers of being. To read these forgotten spells today is to open a portal, not just to the past, but to the eternal. The wisdom within them is not gone. It waits patiently like the stars behind clouds. When spoken with intention, the Book of the Dead still speaks. And what it whispers is this: you are not only flesh, you are not only memory, you are soul, luminous, eternal, and becoming. And every step, even in darkness, brings you closer to the light. In the sacred scrolls of the Book of the Dead, the soul does not walk alone. All along the path, from the tomb to the stars, it is met by powerful beings. These are not distant gods demanding worship. They are companions, reflections, archetypes. Each one carries a key, a lesson, a vibration that helps the soul awaken, remember, and ascend. These divine presences are many, but each plays a unique role in the journey of the soul. At the beginning stands Anubis, the jackal-headed guide. He watches over the body and the tomb. He is the opener of the way. His black skin represents fertility, not death, the rich soil of the Nile. Anubis does not frighten. He reassures. In his hands, the soul is protected, embalmed with sacred oils, made ready for its journey. He leads the soul into the Duat, guarding it through darkness. Anubis is the first comforter, reminding us that death is not abandonment, but guidance. Then there is Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, magic, and measurement. He is the record keeper, the scribe of truth. It is Thoth who stands beside the scales during the weighing of the heart, not to interfere, but to witness, to inscribe the soul's truth into the great record of time. Thoth also appears in many spells, giving words of power. His role is vast: guardian of sacred language, bringer of balance, master of knowledge both earthly and divine. In many ways, Thoth represents the awakened mind, clear, precise, aligned. To call upon Thoth is to call upon clarity in the midst of confusion. At the center of the afterlife stands Osiris, the green-skinned god of resurrection. He is not only the judge, he is the goal. The soul seeks to become like Osiris, whole, restored, victorious over death. Osiris was once a living king, betrayed and killed by his brother Set. But he was reborn, not in the world of the living, but in the realm beyond. There he rules with silence and strength. He symbolizes the eternal spirit, that part of us which dies, yet cannot be destroyed. In the Book of the Dead, the soul does not just seek his approval, it seeks union with him. To become an Osiris was to pass through every gate and emerge radiant, to join the divine. That is why so many spells begin with the line, said by the Osiris name of the deceased. It declares that the transformation has already begun. The soul is not waiting to be saved. It is becoming divine. Ra, the sun god, also plays a central role. He travels each night through the Duat, sailing on the solar bark. In doing so, he mirrors the soul's own journey. Each night, Ra must battle Apophis, the serpent of uncreation. Each morning, he rises again, reborn. This cycle is more than myth. It is the rhythm of transformation. Just as Ra falls and rises, so does the soul. Just as light descends and returns, so do we. To align with Ra is to align with the eternal flame within, the part of us that never fades. There are also goddesses, powerful, luminous, often overlooked. Isis, the wife of Osiris, is the mother of magic, the guardian of love and protection. She resurrected her husband through divine will, becoming the model of devotion and power. Nephthys, her sister, stands at the edge of the visible and invisible. She guards the dead, weeping for them, guiding them gently across the veil. And Ma'at, who is not just a goddess but a principle, appears again and again. She is truth. She is order. She is the balance within chaos. To invoke Ma'at is to align with the cosmos itself. The feather on the scale is her heart. The 42 judges are her extensions. Other helpers appear throughout the journey, not all of them gods in the traditional sense. The 4 sons of Horus, Imsidi, Hapi, Duamutef, and Cabesinuf, guard the organs of the body, each with a role in the protection and purification of the soul. The gatekeepers of the Duat, each with strange names and stranger faces, test the soul not to harm, but to awaken. They demand knowledge, presence, and courage. To pass them is to pass through aspects of the self: fear, pride, doubt, desire. And then there are the boatmen, who ferry the soul across celestial waters. They ask riddles, speak in symbols, and remind the traveler that even movement in the afterlife requires permission, alignment, and sacred intention. Every figure in the Book of the Dead serves a purpose. Each one is part of a great structure, a divine architecture designed not to control the soul, but to elevate it. And though they appear in animal forms with strange names and gestures, they are not separate from us. The Egyptians believed the divine was within, that the gods were not distant rulers, but aspects of the self, the higher self, the deeper self. To call upon Thoth is to awaken wisdom within. To walk with Anubis is to accept change without fear. To face Osiris is to face your highest self and become it. The gods were bridges, living symbols. They walk beside the soul not only after death, but during life, in dreams, in moments of silence, in flashes of knowing. This understanding reshapes the Book of the Dead. It is not a manual of superstition. It is a sacred drama, a reflection of the soul's eternal quest, helped at every turn by forces greater than the mind can grasp, yet closer than the breath. To know the gods is to know the path. To know the path is to know the self. And when the soul realizes this, it is never alone again. The sands have shifted. The tombs have been opened. The papyrus scrolls once sealed in golden coffins now rest beneath glass in museums. The chants once whispered in darkness are now read by scholars in daylight. And yet, the Book of the Dead lives on. Its spells no longer guide royal souls through burial chambers beneath pyramids, but they still echo in the silence of those who seek truth, light, and transformation. Why does this ancient book, written for a culture that vanished thousands of years ago, still hold such power? Why are we drawn to it again and again? The answer lies in its essence. The Book of the Dead was never only about death. It was about how to live with eternity in mind. It offered a vision of the soul's journey, not through fantasy, but through inner truth, and that journey never ends. In today's world, where spiritual paths multiply and distractions grow, this ancient wisdom speaks with a clarity that is rare. It reminds us of the human soul, whether in Egypt or anywhere, hungers for the same things: meaning, liberation, remembrance. Much of what we now call spirituality carries seeds from Egypt. The concept of the judgment of the soul appears in many traditions. Christianity's image of the Last Judgment, where souls are weighed and sent to heaven or hell, echoes the weighing of the heart in the Hall of Ma'at. The idea of confessing sins before divine forces, of a sacred balance that determines one's fate, is not new. It flowed from the Nile long before it reached Rome. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is a text called the Bardo Thodol, known in English as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It, too, is a guide for the soul after death, filled with symbols, challenges, and divine figures. Though developed separately, it reflects the same truth, that the journey of the soul is real and that it can be prepared for with wisdom and devotion. Even in psychology, echoes remain. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, studied Egyptian symbols, knowing that they mirror the archetypes of the human psyche. He saw Anubis as a guide of the unconscious, Ma'at as the inner truth, Osiris as a potential for rebirth within the self. The Book of the Dead, then, is more than history. It is a mirror, showing us that the quest for inner awakening, for freedom from fear, is eternal. And today, it is more needed than ever. In a world obsessed with speed and surface, this ancient text calls us inward. It does not shout. It whispers. It reminds us that death is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is. That to live without knowing the soul is a greater loss than the grave. More and more people across the world are rediscovering this path, not as a religion, but as a framework, a symbolic guide. Artists, mystics, scholars, seekers, all turning to the images, the spells, the gods, not to repeat old rituals, but to remember something timeless. Some read the spells as affirmations. Others used the symbols in meditation. Some explore the gates of the Do-It as psychological trials. Others see the gods as aspects of the higher self. Modern adaptations continue to appear in books, in film, in music. The language is evolving, but the essence remains. And yet, to honor the Book of the Dead is not only to borrow from it, it is to understand what it truly tried to teach. That the soul is vast. That death is not the opposite of life, but its completion. That truth, Ma'at, is not a belief, but a balance. And that the divine is not only above or beyond, but within. Even the structure of the book offers wisdom for today. It is modular, not fixed. Spells were chosen based on individual needs. Some scrolls are short, others long. Some filled with art, others simple lines of text. This reminds us that the journey is personal. There is no single path, but there is always a guide. So, how do we carry this legacy forward? Not by returning to temples of stone, but by making temples of the heart. By walking through our own Do-It, the dark nights of the soul. By facing our fears, our shadow gates, our inner judges. By choosing truth over comfort, clarity over illusion. By living as if the soul matters every day. Because the greatest secret of the Book of the Dead is this: you are not the body, you are the traveler, and your journey is sacred. From tomb to temple, from scroll to spirit, the path continues, and the voice of the ancients still speaks. It says, "You are more than time, you are more than memory, you are becoming light. Walk on,